We are going to continue our discussion of Flexbox, which, as a quick reminder, is the technology that powers all types of columns in the editor. This includes the two layout elements labeled inner columns, which you can find in the widget panel. And to help us understand what Flexbox is, I've got our documentation from MDN Web Docs pulled up. In the previous video, we discussed how columns are one-dimensional, meaning they let you stack elements either vertically or horizontally, but not both. In this video, we'll start by exploring the different alignment options available for columns. Next, we'll discuss how to distribute space between elements, and finally, I'll demonstrate how to adjust the alignment of an individual element. Let's head on back to the editor. We'll be working with the same column and shapes from earlier. In this video, we're going to look at two properties: horizontal content alignment and vertical content alignment. Every feature you see here is referred to as a property, and those under layout are specifically known as flex container properties. The buttons you see here control the positioning and layout of any element within the container you're adjusting. Content alignment refers to how you want the content, in this case, the 9 multicolored shapes you see on the screen, positioned along both the horizontal and vertical axes. And depending on the stacking direction you've chosen, these options will look a bit different. If our stacking direction is set to horizontal, the content alignment properties will look like this. As you can see, the horizontal property has 5 options, while the vertical property has only 3. But if we were to change the column's stacking direction to vertical, these properties will invert. Let's set our stacking direction back to horizontal. First, let's learn how to talk about these properties. Right now, if I look at the column, I could say that its horizontal content alignment property has been set to left align. This is pretty straightforward. All I am truly saying is that my shapes have been justified to the left. This line you see here illustrates how the elements will be positioned based on the axis you've selected. So, how would we read this icon? It essentially indicates that the elements within our container will be aligned flush against the left edge and arranged from left to right. If we select this option instead, you'll notice that our elements are still positioned in a horizontal manner, from left to right. But now, instead of being justified to the left, they have been placed right in the center of the column they're in. We can also align all of our items to be flush against the rightmost edge of our container. You'll notice that once we do this, there's this free space that gets placed at the very front of the stack. Let's take a look at the documentation on MDN again. And the part we're going to focus on now is this section here, which says that Flexbox is a module for distributing space between items. What does it mean to distribute space between items? And what exactly do we mean by the concept of space? Let's head on back to the editor to illustrate this concept. Under the content alignment property, you'll notice that depending on the stacking direction of the column, you'll see these two options here. Hovering over the icons, they read space between and space around. To better illustrate this concept, I have removed a few shapes from the column. When we talk about distributing space between items, we mean that Flexbox, so the columns in the editor, allows you to align and arrange items on your web page by controlling how any remaining space is allocated. One way, the most obvious way to interpret what we see on the screen, is that our 3 items are aligned with the right edge of the container. However, according to the Flexbox model, another perspective is that there is space at the beginning, pushing our 3 elements to the end of the column. This same amount of space could be distributed differently, for example, between the blocks. In this case, the extra free space that was initially at the beginning is divided into 2 equal parts and distributed among these elements. If we select space around, that same space will get divided equally, and this time it will get placed around each element. Take a moment to see what the differences between space around and space between are. You'll notice that with space around, we have some space that gets placed from the edge of the column to the edge of the first shape. And this space seems to be half the amount of space that exists between the right edge of shape 1 and the left side of shape 2. Let's say, for instance, that this space has a total value of 20 pixels. Flexbox is adding 20 pixels on the left side of shape 1 and another 20 pixels on its right. Similarly, this shape 2 here gets 20 pixels on each side. This gives the illusion of a double space between the first and the second shape. However, the technology is calculating the available space and distributing it equally and individually to all of these elements. Next, we'll examine the vertical content alignment property. Here, you have the option to align all of your elements to the top, middle, or bottom. Keep in mind that since these properties are applied at the container level, they will affect all its child elements, in this case, our 3 shapes. So if you set the vertical content alignment property to the middle, then all child elements will be aligned to the middle on that vertical axis. But what happens if you need to customize the alignment of an individual element? For example, let's say we want shape 1 to be placed at the top of the column. By targeting an individual element, such as shape 1, the first property you'll find in the design panel is the alignment property. Here, you'll be able to control the alignment of an individual element. So from here, I can tell shape 1 to be positioned at the very top of the container. Similarly, you can select shape 3 and give that a different alignment, such as placing it at the bottom. You'll notice that although these 2 items inherited the original alignment from the container, the specific properties we set now override the more general alignment assigned at the column level. However, it's important to note that resetting this property at the container level will override those specific properties that we just applied. For example, if you click Top, all elements will shift to the top, removing any previously assigned specific properties.